Hey guys, I've recorded this opening 3 times and I keep deleting it. This isn't one of those videos where I can just jump in, list changes, and move on. This one sits a little heavier with me because I know it's going to sit a little heavier with you. And you know what feeling I'm talking about if you have the capabilities of logging into the PTS and testing stuff. You jump in, you're open, you're testing stuff, you're hoping that things feel right, and then all of a sudden, something doesn't. It's not broken, it's not unusable, it's just you know something is wrong. And to me, that's worse because when something is outright broken, we know what to do. But when it's almost right, but it doesn't feel exactly the way it used to, that messes with you. Especially if you've invested time into your build, getting ammo, stacking your perks, your whole identity's wrapped around it. And if you haven't already guessed what I'm about to talk about, we're talking about the Gauss minigun. And yep, we're going to feel this one immediately. So let me say this clearly before anything else. If you're frustrated, you're not overreacting. If you're disappointed, it makes sense. And if part of you feels like something was taken away, that feeling is valid. Now, you guys might be saying, Naked, what in the heck are you talking about? And that's a fair question. Let's put all the facts on the table because vibes only get us so far. Here is exactly what is going to be changed with the Gauss minigun on the current PTS. As it stands, the base damage dropped from 59 down to 42. And that's not a rounding error, that's a real hit. And the overheating behavior has changed too. The time to the full overheat went from 10 seconds to 15 seconds. But time to empty dropped from 10 seconds to 6.6 seconds. So what does that actually mean? It means that you can fire longer before you cap out, but when you do hit the cap, you fall off faster. And then there's the overheat damage curve. Before, it was incorrectly peaking at 2 times the damage. That's been corrected to 1.6 times the damage. So yeah, part of this was fixing a mistake, but here's the part that players are going to feel immediately. You're doing far less damage for more effort, with less forgiveness when things go sideways. And that's going to be the friction point here. And if you're a weapon that already asks players to stand still, spin up, and commit, it's going to hit hard. Real quick, and then I'll get out of the way. If you like these conversations when they're grounded, when they respect how much time and effort you've put into this game, and when we can talk about hard changes without yelling at each other, that's the space I'm trying to build here. So please make sure to hit the like button and maybe subscribe if you're tracking with me. All right, let's keep going. Because this is the part that's going to get missed during the shouting. The Gauss minigun didn't just get hit in isolation. The entire damage ecosystem has changed. Armor now applies first, damage reduction effects apply after, resistance have more headroom for the future. So yeah, that's kind of a big deal. This means that armor choice matters again, elemental resistance actually scale, and legendary effects aren't doing all the heavy lifting anymore. And that's a good design. But to me, and this is important, when you change the math underneath everything, high investment weapons must be returned to live in the new world. And right now, the Gauss Mini feels like it's still living in the old one. And that doesn't mean that its present trajectory is bad, it just means that the landing hasn't finished. And this is why it's stinging a little harder than a random rifle tweak. The Gauss minigun isn't meta chasing, it's commitment. Players don't casually end up here, they build into it. They invest ammo into it. They accept all the risks that come along with it. So when players say it feels worse, they're not talking about DPS charts. They're going to be talking about identity. And Bethesda does need to hear that. Not as outrage, but as context. Because this isn't a make it overpowered again argument. It's an effort versus reward argument, and that's valid. So here's the real question I want to sit with for a second. If one weapon lands wrong, does that erase everything else that's changing? Or are we letting one moment decide how we feel about the entire direction? Because that's where I want to zoom out. While the Gauss minigun is taking most of the heat, and I get why, there's a lot more happening on the PTS that's going to touch almost every player who logs in. And some of these changes are the kind that you don't notice in one session, but you'll feel them every single time you play. And let's start with armor and weight because this one matters more than people actually think. Armor is going to be lighter, power armor is going to be lighter too, mods are going to be lighter, and durability penalties across the board are less punishing. And that doesn't necessarily sound exciting, but ask yourself this. How many times have you not tried a different setup because you didn't want to deal with the weight or the repair costs? And that friction really adds up, especially to those that are not Fallout first. And Bethesda finally backing off of that pressure changes how people will play. Quietly and hopefully permanently. Now let's look at resistance for a second. Under armor resistance went up. Specific sets are being nudged towards actual identities again. The hazmat, the Chinese stealth armor are simpler, more honest, and easier to understand. And that matters to me because when systems are clear, players make better decisions. And of course, when players make better decisions, balance gets easier instead of harder. But not everything here is going to be popular. Some of the events are changing pacing, some timers are being reduced, and some difficulty spikes are being smoothed out. And I know some of you are thinking already, Naked, are they making this really easier? Are they flattening things too much? And that, of course, is a fair concern, but here's the counter question. Is challenge coming from difficulty or is it coming from inconvenience? Because those two things are definitely not the same. If an event takes longer just because we're waiting around, that's not really a challenge. If an activity punishes you with bad spawns or bad logic, that's not particularly difficult. That's a friction point. And a lot of what's happening here on the PTS feels like Bethesda finally asking themselves, is this actually fun, or have players just learned to tolerate it? Legendary spawn rates are being adjusted, rewards are being cleaned up, enclave activities are being made more worth your time, and none of those are flashy, but all of it respects a player's time. And respecting a player's time is one of the fastest ways to rebuild mine and other players' trust. Okay, now let's talk about the stuff that people won't like. Some of us are going to feel like things are getting normalized, and some of us are going to feel like the edge cases are being sanded down, and some of us are going to feel like the uniqueness of this game is going to be lost a little. And that fear isn't coming from nowhere. And here's the question I want you to think about honestly. Do you want your build to feel powerful because it exploits the math, or because the math thrives inside of it? Because I'm starting to see a trend here, and one of these do not have a future in this game. One will lead to constant whiplash, and the other one will lead to stability. And stability doesn't mean boring, it means predictable enough that adjustments don't feel like betrayals. And right now, on the PTS, it feels like Bethesda is trying to get there. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but intentionally. And that's why this moment matters, because when feedback stays focused on why something feels bad, not just that it just feels bad, it actually changes outcome. And you may not think that they're listening. I didn't think they were listening, but they are listening. We already see this happening in the last iteration of the PTS. So before this turns into sides, before it becomes players versus devs again, it's worth asking this. Do we want to be heard, or do we just want to be loud? Because one is going to produce results and the other one's just going to be white noise. So I want to land this part right here. The PTS isn't perfect. Some things landed well, some things didn't. And some of the things are still clearly in motion. But what matters most to me is this. We're finally in a moment where feedback actually has somewhere to go. If it's framed right, if it's honest, and if we don't burn the whole house down because one room needs work. And that's how this game's going to move forward. Now, speaking of moving forward, I want to quickly point out something that a lot of people have been asking for. If you're one of those players who wants to raid or run events or do end game stuff, but you're constantly stuck on solo because you can't find anybody to hang out with, there's a new website called squadfinder76.com. It lets you create an account, pick your platform, and link up with other Fallout 76 players who are looking to do the exact same thing. There's even an internal chat system built in so you can coordinate without bouncing between apps. And this website was made by Son of Sauce, a Fallout 76 player and Discord user who saw a gap and decided to fill it. And no overhype here, just a tool made by someone in the community for the community. If it sounds useful to you, it's worth checking out. All right, that's it for this one. I want to say thanks to everybody for taking the time to watch the video, making it this far. If you found the video to be somewhat entertaining, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And I look forward to seeing you guys in Appalachia. I'm the Naked Vault Dweller. Love you, bye.